that curled in the night, fighting the sounds in their head.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 500 stations around the country. On Pacifica and NPR and low-power FM and college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations and both TV satellite networks. On Dish Network Channel 9415 Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on Channel 375 of Direct TV, Link TV. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available there in Spanish. I'm Amy Goodman. Our guest, we continue with Adrian Levy, the co-author of a brand new book called Deception: Pakistan, the United States, and the secret trade in nuclear weapons. Adrian Levy, talk about A.Q.Khan and how in 2003 this story unfolds.
Well, a remarkable thing has happened, and just to take you back just a tiny bit before that actual date, of course, post-2001, it became blatantly obvious to everybody that there was only one military government repressing human rights, connected tentatively to 9/11, a state sponsor of terrorism with radical connections to Al-Qaeda, that was proliferating WMD, and of course that wasn't Iraq. It was Pakistan. And the problem facing the Bush administration was that their policy post 9/11 was very much to embrace Pakistan as an essential ally in the war on terror, in order to allow the narrative over Iraq and the WMD, so-called WMD in Iraq, to rise. So 2003, as bits of news begin to leak out, news that the US has known about for years, about Pakistan's nuclear proliferation, a leak of information that happens really quite accidentally through a fairly unknown Iranian dissident group called the MEK, that holds a press conference in Washington in which it reveals that the Iranians have been developing a nuclear program, a uranium program, and it's one that's been largely constructed due to the largesse of the Pakistan military. Now, Washington's forced to react to this, and the Bush administration begins a series of fevered talks with Pervez Musharraf, the president of Pakistan, in Pakistan, and a deal is constructed. And the deal very much is to indemnify the Pakistan military, the #1 ally in the war on terror, and instead of portraying these gross acts of nuclear proliferation, I mean the most serious acts of nuclear proliferation in any of our lifetimes, instead of portraying them as the foreign policy of the Pakistan military, to reconfigure it as the crime of one rogue scientist and a band of merry men who are working with him. This deal has a quid pro quo. A.Q.Khan will be sacrificed along with the scientists, and in return Pervez Musharraf will give to America intelligence on the procurement and proliferation network, will end proliferation, one should add, will be a honest and faithful security partner in the war on terror, passing back intelligence, helping with military operations in the border areas, Waziristan, South Waziristan, Northwest Frontier Province, aiding the crackdown on the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And these are the terms of the deal. So 2003 merges into January 2004. And we have A.Q.Khan appearing in January or February, I think, on the 4th, appearing on live TV, Pakistan television, a great mea culpa, taking personal responsibility for these acts of proliferation. and apologising to his people, speaking in English, a speech very much aimed at the West and America. The next day he's pardoned by Pervez Musharraf, the president, and the day after that, Bush, speaking from the National Defence University in DC, congratulates Musharraf on having effectively stamped out nuclear proliferation. An extraordinary series of events leading to a deal which essentially conceals the nature of Pakistan proliferation.
And what evidence do you have that George W. Bush, that his administration and the Pakistani military concocted this cover-up?
Well, we know that, first of all, from 2001, from all the people who were helping to assemble that information in foreign governments and also within the CIA and the State Department, that a massive dossier of evidence had been gathered, very precisely linking Pakistan and the military more broadly to these acts of proliferation. The CIA itself had infiltrated elements of the Khan network, turning a European supplier, a Swiss man, who had been reporting back information on the nature of these deals, how they were put together. And of course, remember that by 2003, you may well remember that the Libyans had given up their WMD program with the son of Gaddafi coming to London, Saif Gaddafi, and discussing some kind of a deal basically to save his father, to prevent a strike against him, which is what they feared. And the turning over of that program, as well as information gained by the IAEA in Vienna on the Iranian program, showed the way in which those deals had been put together. Now, we also got to talk to many of the European traders and the Pakistani scientists who'd been involved in those deals. And even if you followed briefly the flow of the money, it came from official government bank accounts controlled effectively by the military. These were country-to-country deals. The transports used were military transports. Some of them were done actually on Pakistan International Airways, others were done on military transporters, and some were done on Shaheen Airways, which is a military-owned transport company. And the CIA itself had followed the movement of certain raw materials, for example, to North Korea. And in the following of those the movements, the operations were vast and they involved very often military logistics. But a final thing I think you should consider in the nature of Pakistan and the configuration of these deals is that the Khan project, the nuclear labs outside Islamabad in a place called Kahuta, they were controlled by about 20 tiers of security. You have the labs itself, the scientists working in them, and then surrounding that you have so many different intelligence organisations, military intelligence, the inter-services intelligence, which is the most notorious and pervasive in Pakistan. Then you have lines of plainclothes intelligence agencies from something called IB, Intelligence Bureau, and then you have the military lines. And everything that moves in and out has to go through a process of reporting back to the military. This was described to us by people who'd run the security at Kahuta over many years. So the idea that vast amounts of equipment or know-how, the movement of key scientists could not be known in a country dominated and controlled by the Pakistan military is laughable.
Adrian Levy, what about the United States firing intelligence agents who were uncovering Washington's complicity, purging government departments charged with tracking nuclear proliferation and tipping off the Pakistani government about probes into its illicit program?
Now, this is absolutely critical because I think that this thing that you've picked up on resonates very much in methodology to what went on pre-Iraq and during Iraq. The politicisation of intelligence, the sidelining, bullying and monstering of intelligence officials who attempted to do their jobs. And in the case of Pakistan, it was a fierce operation. One arm of government was contradicting what the other arm of government was doing. Publicly, the administrations were saying non-proliferation is a gold standard in government, and privately they were undermining this, collaborating. Now, the CIA, elements of it, still believed that non-proliferation was a gold standard of government, and within the Bureau looking at Pakistan, they still believed that their remit was to interdict the Pakistan nuclear program. And so we had the case of Richard Barlow, a young officer drafted in from the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency in the State Department, and by the mid-80s, mid to late 80s, he's working on the Pakistan desk within the CIA, becoming through many citations and awards and certificates the preeminent researcher into WMD in Pakistan. And Barlow, through his diligent research, begins to uncover considerable evidence in no distribution cables cables submitted by officials in the State Department to their opposition cohorts in Pakistan, he began to uncover a level of complicity, something that the State Department would call clientitis, but that the broader public would understand as collaboration, whereby information appeared to be leaked on sensitive operations. He began to dig some more.